Hello, this is Mark from Muddy River Clay. Today we're going to make a face planter, and I'm going to make one actually a little bit larger than this. And thanks for joining me today. So I'm going to set that aside and let's get into it. I've already rolled out some slabs just to keep this video moving. And what I tend to do is I tend to get either a jar or a plastic container or something that is going to hold some shape while I put the piece around it. Let's get into it. So what you're looking at is the glass jar that I have. And then I'm going to start placing the slabs of clay around the piece. I've got some plastic around it so that when I'm done, I'll be able to easily pull it out. And for me, this has been the best way to make planters. What I like about it is I'm able to make large pieces. So this is approximately 12 inches tall. And I can do that by shaping these large pieces of slab over, connecting the slabs, and then I can pull the glass piece out. So I'm going to work these seams in. Because it's big and bulky, I am just wrapping them around, and then I'll cut off where the joints meet together so I don't have a ton of overlap, but I will have just enough to get a firm connection. I currently sell these pieces at local shows. I sell them online at muddyriverclay.com, and I'm currently selling pieces at the Jordan Schnitzer Art Museum. So if you're in Eugene, Oregon, check out their gift shop. It was really sweet little intimate gift shop. You can find my pieces there. All right, let me give you another angle. So now I'm at the top. And so what I'm going to do is take pieces of clay that are going to go over it a little bit, and then I will attach them. So got approximately that much room. So I'm cutting my slabs, and I do want to overlay the slabs and join them together. I started making these planners, just about 20 years ago, which is wild. And when I first started making them, I would get beach balls. And so I would start with a beach ball, and then I got larger and larger. What was cool about a beach ball is I could blow it up, wrap the clay around it, and then I could let all the air out and remove the ball and then recycle it and reuse it again. And I really enjoyed that. But I did find that using round balls to get the clay over actually took more clay than wrapping up something like a jar. So I still make the round versions every once in a while, but I have gravitated more towards using these larger forms. This is a piece I am making for the museum. They will buy 6 or 7 pieces, and then they'll sell them, and then they'll reach out and they'll buy more. And they're really just really kind people, really great museum. So again, if you're in the Eugene area, check it out. All right, so now what I'm going to do is take rib and start going over the sides. And I'm looking for the rib, because I don't see it easily. And what I'll do is, as much as possible, I'll get out the seam, get it as smooth as possible, and then I'll start the decoration. So at this point, I have done the sides, and what I'll need to do is turn it over, do the bottom, and then I will clean up the top edge. I'm doing this at a pretty quick pace because I want to keep your attention, but you definitely want to spend some time getting out all of the creases, making it as smooth as possible. When you throw something on the wheel, you're not having to spend all this time because you've taken the time to pull the piece up and get the final texture that you want. But with hand building, you can see how to kind of put it around in a bit of a haphazard fashion. Now you got to spend the time to clean it up. By the way, I am doing this on a manual wheel. So I've got a wheel that I got from the clay shop, and that spins, and that really just makes the process so much easier. Next step, we're going to go ahead and flip the piece over so that we can add a mop. Yeah, it does have some weight to it. All right. So I'm going to make this as smooth as possible. Now, if you take your clay out of the bag as I did, you typically don't need to slip and score. Now, some people have some feelings about that, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right. So now I've got a slab off camera here that I've already rolled out. And I'm just going to put that on. Okay. And then I do want to put my stamp. So I have a stamp at the bottom, and I'll make a drain hole, as this is a planter. I've gotten feedback over the years that the drain holes could be a little larger. So I'll make that a little larger. And so next what I'm going to do is take a pin tool and go around the piece and cut off the excess. Set that aside, jettison aside. I'm leaving a little bit of an overlap because this is going to be a rather large piece, and it is going to hold a plant, hold dirt and water. So got overlapped a little bit. So now I'm going to clean up that seam, just working the clay into it. And then I'll take my rib again and go around and smooth it up. All right. So I've got a rib tool. That's what I really love about being on this. I think it's called a banding wheel. Go around just as if I were on a regular wheel. So now I'm just compressing the piece, going over it again, and this is where you can spend a lot of time. But that's not why you came for the video, so I'll move on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over again. And what you'll find with hand building is there's going to be a certain size where it's going to start sagging. This one just kind of meets that criteria. If it's too loose around the plastic, it'll start to pull down. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and use my rib tool one more time. Clay has memory, they say. So I want you to stay on the piece. All right. So now with a larger piece, I do like to have a rim that goes on the top so that when people pick it up, it's got a nice handle and then also finishes off the piece. And to finish just cleaning this up, and then I'm going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to go ahead and make the edge as clean as possible. So I'm going to take my pen tool, nice clean edge here, and remove that excess. And that's it. I'm going to, or you could cut another one. And I'll show you what I'm doing here. Just taking that coil and pushing it. And you can see it's starting to come together like a pot. I initially made these for a garden show. I got invited to a garden show. And I think it's because I just had made a couple of planners just for fun. I didn't plan on it being 20-year thing. And they sold really well. People really took to them. So I'm just going under the bottom here. And they do today tend to be my largest sellers. I like to try new things and I'll make coffee mugs and lots of other things, but it is the planters that I tend to be known for. Okay, so now to clean that up, you can do a couple of things. You can use a tool like this, and there's variations that'll give you some texture. You can do, so there's different ways that you could give some shape to this piece here. So I'm going to start with a larger tool. And what this does is a couple things. One, it compresses the clay in. So it gets it to, and it starts to give the piece some character. Now you might look at that and say, I don't know that I love that. So you can use another tool and go right over it. And then also like to go on top. There you go. So it's a nice organic edge, but that's how we get that. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is work on the face. So again, I'll give you an example of what this will look like. Sometimes I put a body at the bottom. Sometimes the whole piece is just a face. So I'll bring the nose down. And I don't typically tend to have a preconceived notion of that. I usually just kind of start making the piece and go from there. So I'm going to start with a coil, and that's going to be the nose. And I'll start to look around to see where I think the face wants to be. And let's say I go there. And so now I'm going to squish that nose in. And I start with the nose because then it helps me determine where I want the eyes and where I want the mouth to be. I find that if I start with the eye, then the nose, as I'm cleaning that up, tends to distort the eye. Same thing with the mouth. Sometimes I'll add a mouth, but then it doesn't really go. So people make faces differently, but when I make faces, I start with the nose. Next, I'll add the nostrils. So to do that, I'm going to take 2 small bits of clay and you place those on the side and then you squish those in. Next, you want the top of the nose. So I'm going to take a 3rd ball of clay and this one I'm going to make look a little bit more like a triangle. And then when I place that down, I can work that into, is it the bridge of the nose, the main part of the nose? And the nose really, I think, sets the stage for the piece. So in this case, the nose is sticking out a little bit and it gives an idea of the personality for the piece. Sometimes they're serious. Sometimes they want to have a little bit of an attitude. That's how I make my noses of a nostril. All right. So there's our nose so far. Next, I want the eyes. And so I'm going to create 2 balls of clay for the eyes. Now this is where the expressions come in. Do we want them offset? I tend to have them a little more offset. So it's a little more whimsical, a little less realistic. If you were going to add the glasses, then I'd probably put them closer so that the bridge wouldn't be too far off. You can do them completely off center. So this determines kind of where that will go. So I'm going to do my fancy measurements. You can see that one's about 4 fingers apart, or that one's about 5 fingers apart. So I'll bring that in a little bit, and that's about as fancy as I get measuring. All right, I'm going to squish that in. I'm going to take a craft syringe, or the basis of a craft syringe. Got to wash my tools. And that's how I get the pupil. Next up, I'm going to do eyelid. And so things with some eyelids to keep in mind is if you do a small eyelid, that's what that could look like. If you want to have more of a hooded lid, and add a little bit more, but that's going to all give character to the piece. So try having up the top and the bottom, maybe just a little bit more. And then you start working those in. So I'm going to use my fingertip, and that is how I do I'm going to use just a little bit of water here. And then what I've been doing lately is coming back over them with a tool like this that has a flexible tip and kind of giving some like that. All right, let's do a mouth. So for the mouth, I'm going to take another coil of clay, and I'm wanting this to be the upper lip. So I'm going to make it look as much as an upper lip as possible, and then decide where I want it. Do I want it there? Probably. Do I want it to be lower? You can see just these subtle movements are going to determine the expression. So I'm going to go with this one. So that's what that looks like. And I'm going to work the nostrils in. And then I want it to have hopefully a happy vibe. Sometimes I don't want to be happy. I get that. The world's kind of wild right now. It's hard to be happy all the time. And what I encourage you when you're making a piece is to keep looking at it from different angles. So I noticed the nose wasn't quite clean in there, but I hadn't noticed that at that angle. Okay. And I'm going to put in the crease for the mouth. And as it goes up, it gives a happy vibe. I put this little divot guy in there. And then we have those little tiny creases in our upper lip. And now we need a lower lip. Okay, and so I'll just put that right there and then work that in. Sorry to turn away from you. It is hard to kind of work on the side so that you can see all this, but hopefully you're getting the gist there. All right, so now what I like to do, so we're kind of done with the face. All right, so I'm going to take just a little bit of water, kind of soften some of these edges, clean it up just a little bit. I always say don't use too much water, and then I use a bunch of water. Now, what I like to do is have the eyes have some kind of flower or connection or something. And one of the things I've been doing recently is taking a stamp, cutting a hole out of the center, and placing that over the eye. Let me show you what I mean. So if I take a piece of clay like this, and then I take my stamp and I stamp it in, and I'll do that off screen here. So now I've got the clay in the stamp, and I'm going to take a pin tool and go around the edge to cut that off. Then as I pull that off, so just clean that up, I have this really neat flower. And so now if I cut out the center, I can place it over the eye like so, and then it gives a really fun shape. And what you'll find with hand building is, okay, I have this really cool design. Now I've lost it, but you can actually go over it again. Before I do that, I'm going to take the tool with the flexible edge and just like a flower in the center, I'm going to work that in, make sure it's connected. I'm going to take this stamp and go around it again so I can get those edges back. All right. What do you think of that? So now glazing that, I might do the inside one color, do the outside another color. The other thing I like to do is take a round biscuit cutter, cookie cutter, and go around an eye. And then I can glaze that a color. All right, I do want to put some ears on this guy or gal. So I'm going to take a couple pieces of clay, start with a small coil, and then I'm going to do like a half moon kind of thing. I used to spend a lot of time on ears, get them really delicate detail, but I feel like the less you do with an ear, the better. Out about 2 fingers, give that another angle, and then start squishing that in. So I'm just using my fingertip to squish that in. So I'm working the clay, and you can see it looks like an ear. Didn't spend a lot of time on that. I'm going to go ahead and move that around just a little. I'll do that off camera. Use my fingernail to get it to adhere, and then take a brush, kind of work that in. And then what does give it some character, I find, is if you put just one little tiny ear hole. And again, I'm not going all the way through, just enough. So someone subconsciously looks at that, their brain says it's an ear, and they don't spend too much time looking at it. All right. Well, we are coming to the end here. I do like to use the back of a tool. This is called stippling, and that'll give it some different dimension. All right. So if you were really doing this, you would be just about done. I'm going to let it set up a little bit. So probably an hour or so. You don't want to let it sit too long because this is glass. And if I left it overnight, it's going to start shrinking. I'm going to have a really hard time getting that out, even with the plastic. So you can leave it for a couple of hours, depending on, your situation. Is it humid where you're at? Is it hot? Is it, all those things? The colder it is, the less quickly that's going to happen. But what I'll do is I'll let this sit up for an hour or so. I'll pull out the glass, and then I'll take some tools inside. You want to get all the seams, close them up as much as possible. I put several pieces together. So I will use my tools. I will use a rib to clean up the insides, and then I'll let it dry. And then if this piece comes out well, it will be the Jordan Schnitzer Museum Shop in just a few weeks. All right, let's stop there. I really appreciate you checking in. Thanks for watching my channel. Please like and subscribe. Have a fantastic day. See ya.